So this is going to be my video for Alisa. I'm not really going to do a demo. My efforts to do so have turned up pretty bad. A couple issues running her for a demo is that she really shines in party setup and doesn't really do well solo or even all that well in small groups. So I just kind of want to showcase the build at least to give an idea of how I'm currently using her. So I do build her as a tank. We do focus mostly on making sure that she's durable. We want to make sure we have that 100% block. While we have the adaptive defensive stance, we do get an additional 20% block and 20% damage reduction. So that'll bring us to 20. We do have charisma combined with her personal mastery to where she gets the excitement buff, so she gets an extra 5% block from the charisma, so 25% additional block, which does put her just over 100% block. If she gets armor shredded though, she can become vulnerable. You can kind of solve this a little bit by running one of these boots that has the 9% block, the Drakey boots, which you can do if you're just trying to build her up for tanking purposes. But I'm currently running her with some cleaning agent boots. Primarily, I'm trying to give her as much move speed and move distance so she can actually get into the fights. Once she gets up there, her job is mostly to fight with Destrons, mostly to apply the weapon break. And the way we do this is through crushing weapon break, which increases the destroy weapon on hit by 1 level. So instead of applying 1 stack, you apply 2 stacks per attack. And then Master of Weapons guarantees that when we physical attack, we inflict the destroy weapon. So any attack will apply destroy weapon, and if you walk up and hit him with the cross slash, you'll immediately apply 4 stacks of weapon break, which will pretty much gut their damage, making them much safer to fight. And that's primarily what I use her for. I do give her some AoE abilities with sliding, straight thrust, and flex shaving in case Destrons are near enough to each other, or if I want to hit additional enemies, because you can apply the weapon break to multiple enemies this way. So that's primarily how I've been using her. For the masteries, again, the slotting on this is really weird. Just White Knight in general is just this really clunky class. Doesn't really excel anything too well except for applying weapon and armor break. I'm currently not running the armor break ability on her though, because I have enough other characters that can apply armor break as needed. Giselle, Leeton, Hazing are all able to apply armor break, so, and they're usually able to handle that part enough. I don't have really anyone else that's really good at applying destroy weapon, so that's where I've found a niche for Alisa. So again, her job is basically to go in. She gets a ton of extra speed. She's getting 10 extra speed from having charisma, another 10 speed from Spirit Warrior for every 1 excitement buff. She gets an additional 10 speed, so that's a total of 20 speed because charisma does count as excitement buff. And then her individual mastery white line, she gets another she gets a decrease in action time if she puts an enemy out while she has the excitement, so it does help with her action time. But she's not really killing a lot of stuff, so I mean it's just there in case it happens. Her other masteries don't do too much. Technically, Relax can help with your tankiness, but the peace buff I find is kind of weak, and the fact that it's required that you miss an attack to proc it. And yeah, in case of AoE attacks, Mastery is only activated only if all enemies within range dodge the attack. So you can't even use like AoEs to miss one enemy to try to proc the piece. So I don't find that one particularly useful. we're not killing enough to make Death Blow worthwhile, so honestly White Lion's the only individual mastery choice we really got with this setup. Durability wise, again, with the 100% block, she does have some decent armor values, and you can tank her up a bit more if you do decide to switch some masteries around, if you're willing to drop some of the speed. I do like having the 135 speed. It allows her to have usually very quick turns at the start, so she only has 49 action time between turns. She's got 13 move distance, so she's able to just really trek ahead and make sure that she's up front. Because a lot of problems with building characters that are too tanky is you'll end up struggling with speed, and Alisa's pretty decent at that. She is not as durable or long-lasting as the other tanks. Compared to Scion or Leton, she does not have any reliable way to restore HP. She is completely and utterly dependent on Anne, on White Mage specifically, or I have to run like Misty in, or even have Ray throw out a heal to keep this Alisa going. So she is not meant to be a main tank. She is a support tank. Her job is to go in with the other tanks and then apply her debuffs, and then look out for any straggling enemies or anything else that could be a problem to get on them. I do like to stick her on stuff like Dusk Rangers. I do find that to be a decent job for her, just to keep them off the battle mages. But she can also get torn up by their poison, the magic blowback, and bleed if they apply those on her, because she has no way to get those off either. Her high slash resistance does give her a decent chance of having the bleed remove automatically, but poison will still chew you apart, so she is not reliable to go in by herself and take on a ton of enemies. She does need support from other characters. In exchange, though, she does make those support characters a lot safer. Having Anne or any of your more squishy characters, hazing, who have to get a bit closer to attack stuff like Destrons. With Alisa applying the destroy weapon, it makes it a lot safer for those supports, and that's primarily what I would recommend using her for, at least if you're going to run her as a White Knight. Again, the mastery setup, we want to run Physical Resist 3. This is extremely powerful for reducing physical damage dealt, and currently right now pretty much everything at in-game does nothing but physical damage. So we run that. We do run the Adaptive Combat Stance. We pretty much are running a lot of these other masters anyways, between like Knight of Sword, which is a very offensive one, but we're already running all the other stuff needed for it, so we just slot in the Sword Master and Sword Manual. You can technically drop these if you want to try to build her a little bit tankier, but you are probably going to be still running Veteran Duelist. You're still probably going to be running Melee Weapon Expert for Master of Weapons, Crushing Weapon Break, and that's the main way that you're doing your debuff applying. And then if she is attacked by adjacent enemies, so melee enemies, as long as they do less than her attack power and damage, the damage is reduced by 33%. This is pretty good. It's not as good as Battle Mage's Iron Heart, obviously. It only works on enemies that come up to melee range. The requirement of doing less damage than your attack power is pretty good, because most enemies are not going to be able to do this much unless they get through your block and crit you. So having 1,952 attack power, and again, this is not like, I'm not really focused on building attack with this setup. I mean, I do have muscle training, but that's about it. Alisa just gets a ton of attack just in general from her weapon being max. She gets almost 1,000. attack power from that. She's got a base 500, and then the other, just shy of 500-ish, is coming from her masteries. So you'll, at least enemies that get up close to her will likely do some less damage, but again, it's not as strong as Iron Heart, so don't expect her to endure a savage beating from too many enemies. She can probably reliably take on 2 or 3 enemies, but will likely need support to get out of that. You do want to back her up with long-range DPS the same way as Leton. So Giselle, Ray, and Hazing should all be taking advantage of Alisa going up and pissing enemies off. She is required to synergize with Bianca. There's no way to remove that synergy. And I use Bianca as a assassin who runs around clearing out big packs of enemies by herself as a chain killer. So I don't really get to take advantage of this. There are some cases where I will have Bianca regroup with the party, and then if she kills something next to Alisa, we'll go ahead and trigger stuff like finding a way out. Role delegation is helpful. You can use Alisa to give role delegation to Bianca to help get Bianca into the fight sooner. And then other than that, you usually want to pair her with your range DPS. I currently have her paired with 2 of my healers, which probably isn't ideal. But it would be better to synergize her with characters like Ray, Hazing, or Giselle, who are more party oriented. So that way they can trigger finding a way out whenever they kill enemies that are next to Alisa, to make sure that Alisa keeps getting turns. For action time, we are running weapon block. There's not really a good set for White Knight to use this, but at least if we're blocking, we can at least get our action time down to get some turns. And this will sort of help prevent you from getting in a situation where your action time is just permanently locked, which is a risk and something you definitely don't want to deal with. You could technically drop this and run like Keen Sense. And if you're running Keen Sense, you can then drop the Drakey Perfect Scale, but Drakey Perfect Scale is really good, so probably just keep that on anyways. It's pretty much the best piece of gear you can put on any tank, just for the raw damage reduction effects that it has. Between preventing enemies from getting exposed or flanking on you, means they're much less likely to crit you. You get that extra lightning reflex dodge on responsives. And if an enemy does manage to crit you, at least the crit damage will be a bit lower, so maybe you'll survive it. But yeah, that's my review for Alisa. Not too terribly fond of her as a whole. If I'm ever in parties of smaller 12, Alisa's usually one of the first ones to get cut out. So I mostly just use her for tanking. I really have not found her to be particularly great, at least in my efforts, to build her as a chain killer or any kind of a skirmisher that can actually do damage and survive. She just kind of ends up in this weird jank spot where, like, she's either not tanky enough or doesn't do damage, so the best thing I can really do is just make her tanky and at least make her keep other party members safe by applying weapon break. So that's my review of Alisa. That's the build I'm currently using. Hopefully we get some more content soon. Please, Dandelion.